It takes one instant to make a meaning in our minds that we shouldn't share our light. We shouldn't be as big and as bold, as bodacious as we are meant to be. But do you criticize yourself when you're hearing your voice, the sound of your own voice? Does that scare you? I would love for you to pay attention to the subtle ways that we diminish or dim our own light. And this is powerful because then how else are we dimming ourselves? As adults, we really don't give ourselves enough credit for our full expression. Most often, maybe some of you have heard this, we're not afraid sometimes of our failures. We're more afraid of how big our voice can get, that perhaps we're so afraid of our success versus our fears of failing. Were you told you were too big? Maybe you were told you're not good enough, or shh, 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 you're too loud, you're so extra. And in all of those ways, those were ways to really dim your light, dim your fullest expression of who you are. Hi, I'm Dr. Neeta, and this is your destination, your oasis for being all things just a little bit more brave in your action, in your relationships, and in your life. And today we are braving how to really step into the fullest, most expansive version of who you are, yourself, your unique you, your beautiful, amazing gifts that make you you. And I have been reminded about this because recently my daughter, who is 2, going on 13, she has an annual presentation at her school, and her school is so much fun. And she's actually going to be 3 pretty soon. And so last year, when she did the same presentation, or it was a variation of this, they usually do this around Mother's Day, and it's a beautiful, sweet presentation that they do, and there's singing and there's dancing. And last year, she was a little shy. I mean, she was barely 2. And this year, I got to see her fullest expression. And yes, she was in the center. And yes, she was the loudest one singing in the group. And yes, she was the loudest one singing on the sidelines. And one of her friends said, shh. And so they had, a little scuffle. And it was interesting because the little girl who tried to, shut my daughter up. And of course, she was, being disruptive because the teacher had to tell her to be quiet. And it reminded me how it takes one moment. Okay. And my daughter was in the wrong too. She was not supposed to be talking on the sidelines when the others were performing. So, yes. But it takes one instance to shut and dim our lights. Not that my daughter was traumatized at that moment, not saying that. I'm giving reference and reverence to it takes one instant to make a meaning in our minds that we shouldn't share our light. We shouldn't be as big and as bold, as bodacious as we are meant to be, because we're supposed to be as tall as everybody else. We're supposed to be the fitting inside the box. And society tells us that with all of the things that we have to do for ourselves in order to be enough, to fit in, to belong. And if you don't have a certain X, Y, or Z, then you won't fit in. And I'm curious to know, like, where does this start? Right? I mean, of course, the data shows that, well, a lot of these things happen before the age of 7. And so we make these imprints in our brain. And, if you follow a lot of personal growth, a lot of the personal growth experts, and many of them who we've had on the Brave Table. So if you're new and if you're watching this on YouTube and you're like, ooh, I'm inspired, I want to learn more, you can just browse through. We have a playlist and you can go through some of the various and most exciting people that we've had on. Yet, where do people learn to dim their light and really cocoon themselves and fit in this good girl box? Because society tells us that we are supposed to be that person, for our families. but at the expense of ourselves. Or society tells us that no, you are going to have mom guilt because you can't go live your dreams because your dream now is to raise your family. Now, no shade on anyone that does this, but can we have both? Can we also step into the next version of ourselves? Can we allow ourselves to be brave and explore our edges? Is there a reason why that, I was just looking this up. The National Institute of Mental Health reports that public speaking anxiety or glossophobia, so your throat chakra, affects about 40% of the population. This is a Gallup News service. And this was, I'm sure there's a more recent one, but this is the National Social Anxiety Center. This is nationalsocialanxietycenter.com. And because this underlying crippling fear is judgment or negative valuation of others. And so public speaking anxiety is considered a social anxiety disorder. So, in my travels in the spring, I had about 5 different events that I was either leading or keynoting or leading a workshop or in a retreat-esque environment. And I started paying attention to a lot of these cues because there was a time when I used to really have this glossophobia. I didn't know that it was glossophobia at the time, but now we have a disorder for everything. So I can say that at one time, I definitely had a fear against public speaking and if for those of you who have been following me for a while, you probably know that I took an improv class. And this was very early on in kind of the healing journey after my divorce, where I just needed to find confidence in myself. And I'm like, I'm going to do that one thing that scares me. And now, if anybody has ever heard of post traumatic growth, this tends to happen when you've gone through something really big or traumatic. There's 2 ways to go about it. You can shut down and you can shut the world down, or you go into an intense growth mode, which is why you hear a lot of stories of triumph. You hear a lot of these hero journeys or, journeys and these heroic stories. And a lot of times this is what Disney movies or Pixar movies are based out of, right? You have the hero's journey. They go into some sort of trouble or conflict, and then they rise out of it because they start finding themselves. There is a transformation that happens. They start to take ownership. They start to have agency, and they explore and they self-develop and they grow. Well, many times post-traumatic growth happens after something bad happens. Hence, for me, it was a divorce. And of course, before that, a lot of my losses. But really to be able to channel that into, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with the cards that I've been dealt so that I can actually show up better for the people around me? And this started out as an endeavor to see if I could be a better leader, because at this time I was still a cosmetic dentist. And this was huge because up until this point, I was so afraid to even mess up, to make mistakes. And if you've ever taken an improv class, Second City, shout out to Chicago, my hometown, Chi-Town on North Avenue. I was at that Second City class and it was 3 hours a week and 3 hours a week. And boy, you got the permission to howl like a moon dog. And you don't know what a moon dog is, you don't need to know because everything is made up and you have your own little magical world and everyone is saying yes around you. And it's the most beautiful and encouraging thing because for 3 hours, you're making up stuff, you're playing these like zip, zap, zap games, and you're throwing just all different kinds of words and different language in it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And it totally gets you out of your zone. And the only thing that they're asking of you is to be present. The only thing they're asking of you is to literally be present. So I would come home and I would have a headache because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm using my brain so much. just because you had to be on and you had to remember, okay, what did this person say? He said some sort of jargon and some sort of language, and you're going to repeat it back, or you're going to create a scene, or you're going to create a scenario. And the goal, all right, folks, the goal was not to be funny, okay? The goal was not to be funny. Although there were a lot of people who probably were trying to get into SNL, and because that is kind of the early stages, you go through Second City, you go through the whole track. And so I know that there are people who are trying to do their stand-up bit and their routines, and their goal was every single soundbite was supposed to be funny. But the real goal of improv was just to allow yourself to actually mess up. And now for somebody like me, who's, perfectionism was a big thing for me, and people pleasing was also a big thing. The nerve of myself to actually put myself in these conditions to literally unlearn and unschool all of the things I was so used to being so put together and so ready to perfect and to prove. And y'all, it was splayed out there. And yes, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, I am wearing my favorite shirt. I am my ancestors' wildest dreams, just so you know. This was such a beautiful shirt that I just recently got, and I'm like, I cannot wear it enough. It's amazing. I'm going to be living in this. And I feel like it's one of those things where, you have something that you really, really love and you really embody. And when you wear it, you become this confident goddess. I'm just going to call it that. And that's how I feel. And that's how I feel every time I wear it. And I'm curious to know, you can put it in the chat and or tag us. What do you wear that gets you into your superpower place? And I share this because also I just recently was invited to my son's school to talk about the art of podcasting. And one of their projects this year, and my son is in the younger class, but I was asked to do a session with the older kids, and it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful to see that these 9 to 11-year-olds, theirs is all about how to does power disrupt? And that's the question that they have for the year for themselves. And it's so beautiful because every year for the school year, and those of you educators who are listening to this, Brave Table, to have a question that is the basis for the year. And I thought this was so brilliant. And so the question is, does power corrupt? And one of the 9 to 11-year-olds in this class, that was the first question that they asked when I came into the school to do this presentation. And I wanted to make it age appropriate because I don't know if the Brave Table podcast is for 9 to 11-year-olds. I just don't. I never thought of it. Because my kiddos are much younger. They're 5 and 2, so they're definitely not listening to this. And so it made me wonder, fam, does your kids listen to, or do your kids, does your family listen to podcasts? And it was wild for me to hear that these kids were already listening to podcasts. And I asked them, okay, who do you actually listen to? And I was so blown away because more than half of them, 9 to 11, by the way, 9 to 11, they are listening to Joe Rogan. And I was like, what in the world? I was not expecting that at all. So this is a sophisticated group of very mature kids who are obviously starting their podcasts. And they were so brilliant. They were self-governing. And, which is what I love, love, love about this school and this community, is that it is all student-led. And so we have these leaders and guides in class. We don't really call them teachers, but they are, but they're the guides. And so to see the self-governing happening, even when others were talking out, even when others were raising or talking out of turn, they were governing themselves. It was wild and bananas because I don't know if you guys know this. I went to Chicago public schools, and that was definitely not the case. And they were so encouraging, and they went around and shared their ideas for their podcast and who their first guest was. I was blown away. Most of them were interviewing someone in their family, someone they looked up to. Some of them were interviewing other entrepreneurs. This is an entrepreneurially based school. And it was really interesting that they did not have this fear. They did not have this fear of public speaking. They did not have this fear of asking questions. Clearly, they didn't even want me to go. We were having so much fun. And I brought this camera, or this, not camera, but this mic that I have for karaoke. You guys can get it. It's $20 on Amazon. And I passed the mic around. And it was interesting because the only thing that really came up in this group was I don't really like the sound of my voice on mics. And this is what we have to do to really step into our own self expression and really self acceptance of ourselves. And I had quite a few of those kids that shared, "Oh, I don't really like my voice." Do you know that when you do a podcast, you actually have to use a mic? Well, why do I have to use a mic? Well, because the sound quality is so important. So then I was going into the science of podcasting, which I didn't think I was going to, ever do. But it's true, right? We need to and just notice, if of course you listening to this, maybe you don't ever have dreams of having a podcast, but do you criticize yourself when you're hearing your voice, the sound of your own voice? Does that scare you? If you have ever left somebody a voice note message or a video message, do you critique yourself? Do you delete it if you've made a mistake? I would love for you to pay attention to the subtle ways that we diminish or dim our own light. And this is powerful because then how else are we dimming ourselves? And I was so inspired by these kids in the classroom because not only are they're quite advanced, I was very blown away. Or maybe this generation that's growing up, they are wild indigo kids in terms of they are just so brilliant. And so we just don't give them enough credit. And I'm just so thankful for the owners of the entire school because this goes into the 8th grade or the equivalent of that. And even though they don't really have grades, but it's just so beautiful to see when we put the agency with our own, with young people, they start to come up with ideas and plans once they're given the tools to. And so the questions that they were asking me, why did you start the podcast? Why did you decide to just focus on women? Why did you decide to focus on brave topics? And it just blew me away. I was not expecting those questions from 9 to 11-year-olds. I just wasn't. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up here is as adults, we really don't give ourselves enough credit for our full expression. And even as adults, we are perhaps chasing the validation with other people. And maybe this group was an anomaly, but I did not sense any hesitation. I did not sense any hesitation of any, except for this tiny, 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 tiny percentage of the ones who, didn't like their voice or didn't like the way they sounded on a mic. And yeah, it is scary. It is scary because we're hearing our voice potentially being able to impact other people. And most often, maybe some of you have heard this, we're not afraid sometimes of our failures. We're more afraid of how big our voice can get. That perhaps we're so afraid of our success versus our fears of failing. And this is big because in this past month, where I've had to do several different keynotes and workshops, and I didn't have the time to perfect, I didn't have the time to shape it to a way where, I have all the time in the world to keep practicing and practicing and refining it. It was, nope, this is the best that I'm going to do with the time that I have. And I have to trust that I'm really, really good because I am, because otherwise they wouldn't have brought me to their stages. And I'm going to trust in myself, and I'm going to be okay that even if I mess up, I'm going to still give them value. And I'm going to humanize those moments. And so, can we do more of that? Can we do more of that? And how do you actually, what are the steps to begin to fully embody your own uniqueness, to fully embody your own curiosity of yourself, your own, if you will, freak flag that we all have, which makes us so unique, which makes us all unicorns, believe it or not, and allowing ourselves to really embrace what makes us so different. And this was a similar topic that I shared at my 3 days at Sri Ravi Shankar's Art of Living Center. And it was just beyond magical to see the amount of transformations, as well as, the Highest Self Festival, which we had, which was in Austin earlier last month. And it was great that we are now at Highest Self Institute training people to fully get embodied. And there's a practice that we take you through over 3 months where you learn how to emote, embody, and express. And you emote, embody, and express. And you emote, embody, and express. And what that means is you learn how to be okay with big feelings. You learn how to be okay with big emotions. Because many times we think that traditional rules of personal growth and personal development, it's just listening to this podcast and it's mental. And we're thinking about it and we're thinking about it and we're thinking happy thoughts and we're supposed to think happy thoughts and you're doing the meditations and you're thinking happy thoughts. Guess what, everybody who's watching this on YouTube as well, you're thinking those mental thoughts. It's in your head. So I answered a question that one of the students had at one of the keynotes that I was doing at a university in Illinois. And they asked, but I know all of the things. I've read all of these things. I've read everything. I've read every article. And you probably know somebody like this too. Right. You have read every article, but can you think your feelings or can you feel them? Let's feel them right now. And so I instructed everybody to think of something that made you really angry. Now, whether you were running, in traffic, I mean, not running, hopefully, you were driving in traffic, you got cut off, or somebody sent you a mean text message, somebody wrote something mean on your social media, whatever got you so triggered in that moment, bring to mind how you felt. Okay, so the audience was angry, frustrated, rageful. I told that person number of times and I can't believe they did that again. They were late again. They were on their phone the entire time. So whatever that feeling is, all right, feel it. Where do you feel it? Bring your hand to your chest. Where are you feeling that emotion? Okay, are you feeling that in your chest? Notice, are you breathing shallow? Notice, are you having aches and pains in your jaw? Because that's where we hold our tension. Do you feel like you want to hit something, punch something, kick something, beep your horn? Are you feeling that pain in your lower back? Are you feeling jittery in your stomach? Where are you feeling that? So, and this went on and on and on. And this was great because we had a great resolve and they were in different partners groups. And oftentimes we're just not giving ourselves permission to feel, or we've never been given the tools to feel. And in this triple E embodiment framework that we teach you at one of our certifications that is now actually open for Highest Self Institute, and it's our embodiment certification. It's a 3-month certification. And by the end of the 12 weeks, you not only learn how to fully emote, because the first month is all about emoting. The first month is all about feeling the big feels, which allows you to actually share out loud how you're feeling. Share out loud how this person hurt you. Share out loud how and what your emotions were. And we don't really dive into the stories behind it. We just share about, and you'll get really good at this, knowing what the emotion is and clearing the emotion, feeling it, clearing it, understanding it, being with it, massaging it, grappling with it, embodying it. And then we learn how to alchemize it to express. And so when we are going through this framework, we go through also the second month, and the second month is your full embodiment. So, what does that embodiment look like? How are we actually moving our body? Do you know that most of the time we store a lot of trauma in our hips? It's why, well, in my yoga teacher training, we store a lot of emotions in our hips. So, if you're any yoga teachers out there, you know that when you're guiding people into pigeon or any sort of open pose or a supine twist or folded pigeon or any of those, anything that opens up the hips, you might notice that you want to let out a cry or you want to let out emotions or you are just so emotional. Maybe you've gone to a yoga class too, and there have been times where they put you in those hip opening positions where you start to release emotion because we are holding and storing some of our deepest, darkest traumas in that sacral chakra, that second chakra area, which is closest to our hips. It's closest to our reproductive system. It's very sensitive. It's a very vulnerable place. It's also the birth of all creation and the birth of creation of our ideas and our creativity. And when we are one with our creativity, when we are one with that full expression and that full allowance and dancing and movement, and not for anybody else's gaze, right? I know if you come from a performative background like myself, who we would perform on stage to get gaze, to get validation, to get approval, to seek for applause, to seek to win trophies, to get the first place, to seek to gain laughs or eyeballs. That's not this kind of embodiment. This embodiment is not for getting the moves right. It's not for choreography. It's for your own allowance of what it means to feel in your body, what it means to move grief, what it means to move joy, how your body moves when it's angry versus how your body and your hips move when it's in full pleasure versus how your body moves when it's in full rage and anger. And all of those feelings we get to fully feel in our body. And breath work is a way to get there. Movement, dance, hip shaking, twerking is another way to get there. And then we get into, when we're fully opening up our second chakra, we get into month 3 when we go into our full embodiment. What does embodiment even mean? And our full expression. What does expression even mean? Excuse me. Embodiment means when we are feeling in the body, the somatic system of our body, the little tantalization that we can do just when we are slowly shifting ourselves left and right. You can even do this right now if you're noticing the subtle ways. And this also goes into how we are mindfully eating. In Japan, there is a process that is actually called, mindful eating. It's a full practice, and how we, and how we have our tea ceremonies in Japan, where, and this is different. It's similar to chai ceremony, but I think the Japanese, they have this as more of this reverence of, I am going to pay close attention and pay close presence to how I am preparing my tea, how I'm holding the teapot, how I'm actually pouring the tea, what words or things I'm sharing. What am I thinking when I actually pick up the pot or pick up the glass that has the tea? What am I noticing in my body? What am I noticing in my heart? What am I noticing in my shoulders? So, this beautiful practice that we can learn from ancient Japanese traditions. And of course, it's in other traditions as well, in Buddhist philosophy as well, to even savor this ritual of a tea ceremony. Well, that's embodying the tea as well. That's fully taking into account now then your full expression. And in month 3, we go into our full expression. And what does that full expression include? Well, how how are we living our life out loud? How are we fully expressing ourselves with reckless abandon without holding back? And there's a difference when we say oversharing versus and oversharing to prove a point or get attention or to fit in. If you are an oversharer or if you are an undersharer, what is actually present for you? And when you are in your fullest expression, you are so unapologetic and you don't care if you're ruffling feathers. You don't care if you are messing up on stage. You are all of you, take it or leave it. And I had somebody share with me, this was because many of you know that I recently graduated 200-hour yoga teacher training right here in Austin. And that was one wild, wild feat. I cannot believe I did that. Shout out to my Y6 crew. You know who you are, and so much love. And we braced this. This was 8 weekends over 3 months. I honestly didn't think I would stick into sucking at something new. And it was a great reminder. I will link in the show notes. I talk about this too in a different solo cast episode. But to recap everything, did I get the nerves again? Yes. Was I anxious? I didn't have glossophobia, but I definitely had the nervous anxiety of being able to lead a 60-minute class and really feel that confidence in myself. But this time, having all of the tools to know that, listen, you're not going to be a seasoned yoga teacher right away. And don't expect to be. And that's okay. You're just learning. You've probably taught maybe 20 classes with the amount of practice that we've been doing over the course of the 8 weeks, right? Teaching other friends, practicing in the mirror, etc. So seasoned yoga teachers have been teaching for a very, very long time. Now, do I have a compound effect? Absolutely, because I speak on stage. I speak to you guys every week. But it was so different. Oh my gosh. Like everyone, it was so different. And I think because it's like speaking a language, a new language, and you want to make sure you're not so verbose for anybody who's ever taken a yoga class. And I can be very verbose. And you can't when you're leading somebody to get into dancer pose or eagle pose. You cannot be verbose. And bless my heart, my 2 amazing cutie pie teachers, bless them, they were amazing. And that was my issue. And I think, brevity is beautiful. Brevity is amazing. And it was a skill, and it's still a skill that I have to learn. Yet it was the most beautiful way to remind myself that it's okay to suck at something new. It is okay to suck, because in the suck, you're learning how to enjoy the journey. It's not about, okay, memorizing everything and, then it's done. It's like been there, done that, check it off your box. No, that's not how I want to live. I want to be in that full expression off the mat. And for me, yoga is literally a way of living. It's a way of, how can I be kind to myself? How can I honor my sacred vessel, which is my body, every day, that I'm fully expressing, whether it's yoga some days or whether it's sensual dance or whether it's embodying my grief and my rage and my anger because I've had a crazy week and I'm going to take my kids with me in this practice. My daughter she's been having meltdowns in the morning and at night. She's turning 3, and we all know 3-nagers, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Moms, I'm with you. 3-nagers is a whole thing. I had to go through the same thing with my son, and we're getting into it with my daughter. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go back to the tools that I had with my son. So I took out, we have a calming corner, and in the calming corner, we have stuffies, we have a whole chart. How do you feel? How are you feeling? And I have to pick her up in order to help her regulate. And first, she's like kicking and screaming, "No, mama, get away from me, get away from me." And I'm like, you know what? No, she's gonna be okay. And I'll show her this map. And I'm like, how are you feeling? And yesterday she was like, okay, scared, and she was sad because both of those faces look the same because it's a whole chart on facial expressions, and she can't quite understand the difference between some of them, and some of them it's like confused, excited. So I don't expect her to know all of the feelings, but I want her to be emotionally intelligent in understanding her feels, especially the wide range that we have, right? And if her brother takes her toy away from her, which is, very common, then there's a battle, and then there's a power struggle, and all of the things, of course, right before a bedtime. Why not? And all this to say that allowing her or modeling for her, all right, here's how we can regulate. We're going to feel this, and we're going to feel angry. So let's throw these stuffies, and I have a open basket. So it kind of looks like a basketball hoop, but it's not because it's an open basket. But then we start throwing her stuffies, her stuffed animals, in a basket, and she thought it was so funny. And she started giggling. And it was like, oh, there you go. That's it. All it took was a few minutes of connection. So connecting, and then feeling. So connect with that feeling, allowing yourself to feel it, and then alchemizing or shifting it. And so if I'm able to do this with my daughter and allow that to be fully expressed, I'm giving her the tools at a young age, just like I did for my son. And it's such a reminder for me every day that no matter what, all right, I could be dysregulated and I can be completely pissed or upset because of, just the day's happenings, or you're having a bad week, or you're having a backache and you don't know what the matter is. So you take it on somebody else because you're grumpy, or you haven't eaten all day, so you're hangry. How can you then feel it and alchemize it, maybe put on a luxurious song that you can vibe to, and it changes your state and you fully express it? Just like how you can fully express yourself while getting a $20 karaoke mic from Amazon and hearing your voice and seeing how your voice actually sounds, and to start to build that muscle of accepting your uniqueness in this stage. Remember, being brave to suck at something new, being brave to put yourself out there, being brave to, be 9 and 11 again. 9 and 11, and have that curious awe and wonder, and not worry what the world would think, and not to worry of the judgment. And if I can inspire you to be that 9-year-old version of yourself, what would you do? How would you fully express and fully embody yourself without a care in the world? How would you report back to your family and friends, and maybe develop this new skill that you're like, all right, I'm going to do it. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it no matter what. And how would you feel on the other side? And I have to share that this year, with all of the talks that I've done, just embodying this practice, emote, embody, express, my talks have gotten way better. I just don't give an F because I know that I'm bringing all of myself, and I'm trusting that at the end of the day, whoever I'm speaking to, there's going to be at least that one person that has that shift, or that's asking a different question. And I'm going to leave with you what I left with the 9 to 11-year-olds, that when we are coming from a place of awe, wonder, connection, curiosity, our perspectives change. We get to be in that seat of the interviewer. We get to be in that seat of someone who is exploring without any worry or judgment of, oh my gosh, what if this goes wrong? What if it actually goes right? What if it goes beyond your wildest imagination? Just because you are fully expressed. What relationships would you have? What people would be magnetically drawn to you and so attracted to you and your vibe and your energy and your essence because you are just doing you? And I can't tell you how many times I am in rooms with people now who are like, whoa, what is this juice that you have? You're just all filled with like all of this doo-doo yummy energy, and it's so contagious and it's amazing because when you're filling your own cup, when you are practicing this triple E method that we like to call at Highest Self Institute, you start to see these beautiful ripple effects in your community, in your family, in your relationships. And the juiciness that comes out of it because you are sovereign in yourself, you are fully acclimated and aligned with who you want to be. You're no longer afraid of what people think. You know, you're no longer afraid of being accused, or you have to be in this like ego set of I've got to be right and I've got to do this. Well, where is that coming from? That's coming from a fear, right? Or you're so, I meet sometimes people who are just so, they want to protect everything and they want to hoard everything. And I'm so afraid of, and we've got this saying, nazar lag jayegi, which means in Hindi, it means I'm afraid that you're going to give me the evil eye. I say this as I have an evil eye from Turkey that somebody gifted me from one of our events. Shout out to you. You know who you are. They gave it to me and it's from Turkey and it's evil eye. But this is the thing, the superstitious thing that nazar lag jayegi, I shouldn't share my deepest, wildest dreams with anybody because for fear of, well, what are you so afraid of? What I say is share it with the right people. Share it with the people that are going to support you. Share it with the people who are going to be so wildly excited and supporting you and cheering you on and your biggest cheerleaders along the way. And if you don't have anybody, share it online. Tag us at the Brave Table. Tag me at Neeta Bhushan. I will be your biggest champion. And I love to share your stories and what comes up after you listen to this. And hey, as I'm wearing my favorite shirt, I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams. So you can watch it on YouTube. And it is something that I truly believe. And I truly believe that for you too. And this happens when we can heal our lineage, when we can heal some of the things that have held us back in the past, when we can heal some of our past traumas, when we can feel so that we can fully embody it and fully transform it into the next iteration of who we are becoming. And so that, my friends, I invite you, if this resonates with you, I invite you to the most expansive, the most juicy, the most incredible 3 months. And Sahara, Rose, and I, my amazing co-founder, and I at Highest Self Institute, we put on this certification once a year. And our doors are open this year for this embodiment certification, where you learn the triple E embodiment method, where you go through the process to emote, embody, and truly learn how to fully express so that you, and I'm wearing my wings, so you can fly your wings and transform like the butterfly you are and create those ripple effects in your community. So if that is exciting for you, I will go ahead and drop that link in the show notes later on today. So thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you. And if you are watching this on YouTube, I hope you can subscribe, like this video, comment what you loved. If you are listening to this on iTunes or Spotify, just hit the follow button, the plus button. It really helps us move the show more than you know, and helps us grow and get into the eyeballs of other people who are looking to be just more brave in their actions and in their life. And it's folks like you who come back every week to share this with other people. And I hope this gave you a little dose of juicy goodness today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time on the Brave Table.